everybody. It's Allie, and welcome to our Y&R Chat for Sunday, June 21st, 2020. We had 5 wedding episodes this week, which means we had 5 brides, which means we had 5 wedding dresses, which means we get to vote on the very best wedding dress of the week at yrchat.com. That's our poll question. Who had the best wedding dress? Ooh, that's a fun note to start out on. We have Sharon, Christine, Olivia, Phyllis, and Nikki, or a dark horse candidate, Jumbo Man. If anyone wants to cast a vote for Jumbo Man with the best wedding dress of the week, I fully support that. Oh, I have to cast my vote for Sharon. I can't help myself. In 1996, Sharon was just the sweetest little country angel bride ever. I just loved her. I loved looking at her. I mean, she was marrying into this incredibly wealthy family, and she didn't even want a big wedding. She didn't even have anyone there to do her hair and makeup professionally, even though she could have afforded it. This could have been the most elaborate and lavish wedding ever, but instead it was just Sharon and Victoria in her bridal suite. Victoria there with her curling iron and her hairspray, and they were just making it simple, and I loved that. I loved her. I loved Nick in 1996. He was the cutest little boy band member ever, with his long hair that kind of curled around his face. Like, it came down on both sides of his face, which made his whole head and neck look like a toadstool. He had a toadstool-shaped head in 96, and it was adorable. He was waking up on the morning of his wedding to call his bride, Sharon, who was staying at her mother's house for the very last time. Oh! It must have been a special day, because I think that Doris was being unusually calm and supportive on Sharon's very special wedding day. I think Doris must have had a brief moment where she was feeling like her troubled daughter's days of trouble were over. But she was wrong, right? The trouble was just beginning. It's really such a stark change to look at Sharon in 96 and to look at her today. And the entire time I'm looking at her so youthful and so sweet, and I'm thinking about how now she is this fully matured woman who is battling breast cancer. Wow. I loved this episode. This was incredible for me. I loved especially seeing Victoria there, helping Sharon and welcoming Sharon into the family and standing up for Sharon, both literally and figuratively. And Victoria was not standing up for Sharon because she had some amazing bond with Sharon. Victoria was trying to embrace the bond that she had with her brother. And Victoria was putting any problems that she had with Sharon aside in order to make this day happy for Nick. Victoria knew how important this day was for Nick, and she was defending to Nick's right to choose the wedding that he wanted and to choose the woman that he would marry. Nikki was being so incredibly selfish on Nick's happiest day. I'm sure that it's very natural to feel sad or maybe even disappointed, but Nikki was making absolutely no attempt to evolve herself past her own feelings. Like, the best that Nikki could do was show up at the wedding and not make a scene. Ugh. And yet, at the same time, it was an evolution for Nikki's character, because here now, she had become the meddling mother. Nikki was stepping outside of her own romantic problems and her own life for maybe the first time in order to create romantic problems for Nick and Sharon. So this was an interesting period for Nikki, and I actually really liked it a lot in retrospect. Nikki was giving so much facial nuance during the wedding ceremony. It was as if it took every fiber of her being to not just stand up and scream at the top of her lungs. And it was really quite a pleasure to watch. Nikki, I mean, it had all of the drama really right there without her even saying anything. Just her being there in her dramatic lavender high collar dress with this huge bouquet of curls on top of her head with just one straight chunk of bangs hanging down in front of her face in one straight piece. I mean, Nikki looked less like the mother of a bride, the mother of the groom, sorry. I was just so focused on how she looked a lot more just like a cartoon villain. Monday's show from '96 was also a reminder for me that Dina was a very selfish woman throughout her lifetime. I think she would agree to that. I think she would acknowledge that. Because here we are in '96. Dina had come back to town hoping for a reconciliation with John, and Dina would have stayed in Genoa City for John's love. But she would not have stayed in Genoa City for Jack's love. If John would have given Dina even just a little bit of attention, she would have stayed. But she chose her pride over her own son and his request to have a relationship with her. And all because John canceled their dinner plans. It just really stood out to me as Dina was standing in front of Jack, telling him that she was going to leave town again, and apologizing for not being there for him over all of these years, while at the same time just giving lip service to all of the ways that she could be there for him now. Twice she said to Jack, "Let me know if you need anything." And when Jack said to her, "I needed you a long time ago," Dina just kind of scurried past it. She gave her apology. She expressed her regret, but she offered nothing of herself to make it better, to try to make it right. There wasn't any real effort there. It was just the lip service. Now, granted, Catherine had lured her there under false pretenses. Once again, Catherine was trying to find a way to use Dina to break up John and Jill. Catherine was doing that in the 1991 episode of Brad and Tracy's wedding, and now here Catherine was doing it again in 1996. I guess in those days, everything with Catherine and Jill was about making each other's lives just a little bit more miserable. And it worked, but it was a sad, although entertaining victory to accomplish. "I want to go to Hawaii right now." Right now. I don't want to wait another moment. Danny and Christine's wedding was so beautiful, and it really felt authentic. It seemed like a real wedding. My only wish, honestly, is that we could have had more of a sense of the island. Because I didn't even realize that we were in Hawaii specifically until a little ways into the episode when I think it was Rex who mentioned it. And again, I forgot that Rex was Danny and Gina's father. It's one of these things that I know in theory, and it's always there in the back of my mind, but I never fully connected. I've just never seen them being family on screen before, but here we were. I mean, Rex died the year that I started watching, so I didn't get to see him interact with his children all of that much. I just really didn't get to see all of that much Rex. Was Rex dating Leanna Love? Were they together? Okay, you are not going to believe this. I can't believe this. But I loved Leanna Love this week. I know, take a moment to take it in, but I could not help myself. I went into it with my preconceived notion that she was annoying, and she completely turned me around by the end of the episode. She was really funny and really bratty about losing her suitcases, and she was making these really audacious comedic faces about the whole thing, and it totally turned me around. I just never saw her as funny before. By the time that I came along, Leanna was always just there being nosy. I mean, it was after she wrote the book about Victor, so she was always just seeming desperate or as if all she cared about was revenge. I didn't know that there was ever a time when she was the spunky little firecracker character, kind of like Marcy Ryland's Abby or Chloe at times, or I'm sure you could name any other number of little firecrackers. I didn't know that was her, but wow. If I'm honest with myself, I'm sure that it was really more Jumbo Man that turned me around on Leanna Love. I was kind of hoping for a love connection between Leanna and Jumbo Man. Wouldn't that have been fabulous if Leanna showed up at Christine and Danny's wedding with Jumbo Man on her arm in his rhinestone cape? Christine would have killed her. But I would have loved it. So Jumbo Man is like the star of the week for me. Does anybody know him? Does anybody know him? Are there any Jumbo Man fans out there? I'm assuming that he was a wrestler because he mentioned being in Hawaii for a match. But I looked him up online and I couldn't find anything about him. I mean, I assumed that it was a cameo by a real wrestler, but I don't know now, maybe Y&R created this character. I'm not sure. Fill me in if you know. I need to know more about Jumbo Man. If anybody has the scoop, please leave me a comment. I was kind of pulling for Leanna to at least sneak out with Jumbo Man later on that night and maybe hook up with him. Well, after Leanna accidentally got her suitcases switched with my man Jumbo Man and they got it all worked out, Danny and Christine's wedding went off without a hitch. You know, one of the things I think I most appreciated about Danny and Christine's wedding was the fact that there was a lot of movement. It wasn't just, okay, boom, ceremony. We were moving through the stages of this wedding, starting out with Chris in her bridal suite with Nina and Gina. Nina and Gina. Hey, that rhymes. Nina and Gina. Nina and Gina. Was anybody else shocked to see David Kimball there as Nina's date? Or were they married? Maybe they were married. He was a big part of the show at that time, and David seemed really happy to be there. I mean, why not? Free trip to Hawaii on the house. He was so grateful, he would even try to turn around and return the favor by attempting to kill the bride and the groom and the maid of honor a year later. Oh, there was some drama. I loved those beautiful scenes with Christine and Scott. I forget that he was her half brother, I think. It's one of those things that I know intellectually and I've heard so many times over the years, but when I wasn't watching then, and I keep that little piece of info in the way back of my mind, and then when I see them together, I'm like, oh yeah, they were brother and sister, and he was so happy for her, and they both looked so young and so gorgeous, pulling up to the church in that long white limo, and Christine was there looking like a beautiful white puff of tulle. It was just stunning. But then we also had those really poignant moments of Scott and Christine inside the chapel, as she was remembering their mother, who had just recently passed away, and she had AIDS, I believe. Oh my goodness, yes. Yes, I thought it was cute the whole time, the way Scott was carrying Christine's little makeup case, and I noted that. But then I saw why it was there when Christine asked to have a moment to herself, and she opened up her makeup case and pulled out that picture of her mother so that a piece of her mother could be there with her on her wedding day. I think it would be very interesting to see the story of Christine's mother and also her death. I mean, I've never ever seen Chris's mom on screen. I only know about her through legend and of course the very bold AIDS storyline that Y&R had written at the time. Oh, how sad. But I'd love to see that. I really felt for Chris wanting her mother there on her wedding day. But she was able to pick herself up and really embrace the joy, and the ceremony it turned out to be so nice in the little, what was it, sort of a pergola outside in Hawaii, kind of on a cliff. It was very beautiful. It felt like a real wedding ceremony. Totally boring. I mean, the actual ceremony itself was boring. It was very like, let's pray and join this couple together in holy matrimony, kiss the bride, amen. Now let's go luau. All right. That was the part where they got me back engaged. I was like, all right, let's luau. I hope that the following episode was a lot of fun, because I got really excited when I saw all of those dancers coming through, and all of a sudden we had those drum beats. I was ready to get this party started, and then just then realized that, oh man, the episode's over. I was just getting fired up. Olivia and Malcolm's wedding from 1997. This was an out of left field choice for Weddings Week, I think, considering the fact that the bride was dreaming about another man just moments before the wedding. Why did Y&R pick this one? I wonder if they just wanted to give some variety, some drama, show us, the types of weddings that we sometimes see, where you just know that the couple is in love, but there's somebody out there who they love more, or that they wish they were marrying. Maybe that's why Y&R picked it. It's also possible that Y&R just picked this because they wanted to try to find a way to squeeze in another Shamar Moore episode. I don't know. But either way, 1997 is right inside of my sweet spot of knowledge on Y&R, and also fond memories of Y&R. I swear I could watch any episode with Lil Nate in it forever. I just thought that Lil Nate, like, that kid was one of the all-time best child actors that we've had on the show. He was so freaking cute that I'm surprised Y&R didn't kill him Oh, I just always felt that special connection between Malcolm and Nate. I think Malcolm wanted so badly to be a good dad and a good husband, and it's almost hard to believe that any woman marrying Malcolm would possibly be dreaming of anyone else on her wedding day. Like Malcolm's just, he's so perfect. She should have been marrying somebody else and dreaming of Malcolm. I don't know. I'll tell you though, I was surprised that their wedding didn't have a little bit more personality and pizzazz to it. It was very, very formal. It had like the violin and the classical music in the background. It was very, you know, and which is not how I would describe either Malcolm or Olivia. I mean, Olivia, yes, was a well-to-do doctor, but she was marrying like the coolest, most calm and collected guy on the planet. I just can't help thinking that if that wedding were taking place today, it would have maybe been a little more casual and a little more fun and maybe would have reflected the personalities of the couple. Hey, I'm just glad Olivia showed up. It was clear that Drew was worried about that. Drew was looking real worried. I suspect that Drucilla knew that Olivia had eyes for Neil, and Drew was just hoping to marry her off to nip that in the bud. Maybe Olivia just needed to be spending a little bit more time with her sorority sister, Ashley Abbott. Now that's Sherry Shattuck. The lost Ashley. The Ashley that nobody remembers. But I remember she wasn't bad. In fact, Sherry Shattuck played Ashley a lot closer to the Eileen Davidson version of the character that we have today. Much more sophisticated and serious, although Sherry gave Ashley a funny side too. I just think it's noteworthy that we've officially seen all three of the Ashleys during these classic episodes. First came Eileen Davidson, who originated the role, but then left the show. And when Y&R recast the character, they went in a totally different direction from Eileen, because beautiful Brenda Epperson, my favorite Ashley, came next, and she was much, much, much softer and sweeter and more subdued. And we saw her, earlier on in the week. She was her attitude was much less aggressive. She was much more like, "Now, Victor, remember, Nikki is your ex-wife. I'm your wife now. Let's kiss." The other Ashleys, I think, were more assertive. But, I don't know. Ashley just had... Brenda Epperson just had a Barbie doll vibe to her, I guess. Maybe that's why I liked her. Brenda Epperson just looked like my life-sized Barbie doll. Literally looked like my Barbie doll. So maybe that's why I connected with her. But I just thought she was beautiful and fascinating and classy and soft and sweet and very, very soapy of the day. She kind of gave me like a Dallas vibe or something. Maybe, I don't know, like she belonged riding on horses. Like she was meant to ride horses all her life. But then there was Sherry, who played that role for 3 years, by the way. So even though she was short-lived, she was not that short-lived. 3 years is enough. And I think that she kind of took that role back to its roots from where Brenda Epperson had it. And then Eileen Davidson took that role back again. She snatched it away and took it back to its roots. Now, speaking of classic casting choices, we again saw Sandra Nelson as Phyllis in 1997 during the whole period where she was duping Daniel's biological father into bed to try to swipe a DNA sample from him, real stealth-like, real sexy stealth-like. And I said it before, but I have to elaborate on this. Sandra Nelson was a really good actress, and she was very pretty, and she was very sexy, and she was very talented. But she was totally miscast in this role. I realize now, looking back on it, that Sandra was naturally playing Phyllis in a more sophisticated way. I think that's just who she was. That's how she acted. More sophisticated. But Phyllis's character hadn't evolved there yet. In the Danny days, Phyllis was still pulling desperate stunt after desperate stunt. And desperate and sophisticated just don't gel well together. And so I think that's the reason that this version of the character never gelled. For me, anyway. Now, when Gina Tognoni took over the show, and she gave us a very sophisticated Phyllis. And it was a very sophisticated portrayal. But I think it worked because the character had evolved there. The character had gotten there over time. By the time Gina took over, it wasn't the Danny days. We could accept her in a little bit more of a serious place. But it just didn't work with Sandra. She only played that role for 1 year, and the episode that we saw from 97 was the culmination of that storyline where Danny was finding out that Daniel wasn't his biological son. We also saw Daniel finding that out years later. But Danny was just about to find out that Phyllis had been lying to him for years. His marriage was a lie. His family was a lie. Chris and Paul were right all along about Phyllis. And Chris then encouraged Danny to fight Phyllis for full custody of Daniel, which he won. Phyllis was devastated, and she eventually just left town. The Sandra Nelson version of Phyllis just left town, went back to New York from whence she came, and didn't return until quite a few years later when Phyllis came back as the savvy web designer, as Michelle Stafford, and as a leading lady. As I was watching Malcolm and Olivia's 1997 wedding, and the sub-story of Tricia Dennison, she was pining over Ryan, calling him on his huge 1997 cell phone while he was at the wedding just to find out if he had been thinking of her. I was thinking, well, I wonder why Y&R didn't pick the Ryan and Victoria wedding episode for Weddings Week. That was a really dramatic wedding because Tricia Dennison dressed up as the bride, like knocked Victoria out, had a duplicate of her dress made, and showed up at the wedding, walked all the way down the aisle in her white dress and veil, got to the end of the aisle, and shot and killed Ryan McNeil in cold blood on his wedding day. Ooh, that would have been a good one, a really good wedding. Maybe Y&R is saving that for a Weddings Gone Wrong week or something. Maybe. But I really, really, especially in retrospect, love Tricia Dennison. I love her. And I think that she was as good of a villain as Isabella Bragna. I think they could have easily used her in Villains Week too, because that girl was screwed up. And you could see it in her eyes. She had crazy eyes. You could see it in that episode. Sabrin Janae is the actress's name, and she was just so fantastic. She was playing that role more desperate and more crazy as time went on, because Tricia went from being this sweet and smitten girl who was in love with Ryan to becoming absolutely wacko, and all of that happened over the course of just 3 years. She was totally obsessed with Ryan at the end, in the way that Patty was obsessed with Jack. And didn't Patty also shoot Jack at the altar? So it's a really interesting parallel there. I also am pretty sure that Tricia got carted off to a mental institution somewhere, so who knows? Maybe Tricia is in a padded room right next to Patty right now. They would make a formidable pair. Oh my goodness. I wish Y&R would let Tricia escape from the mental institution and come back to Genoa City. Oh, give her a couple of cats and a new motive, and let's roll. Phyllis and Nick's country bar New Mexico wedding from 2006 was definitely my favorite wedding of the week. It's the wedding that I would have most wanted to attend, because all of the other weddings were very formal, and in contrast, Nick and Phyllis's bar wedding was just fun. You know, I mean, there was nothing traditional about it. It was completely offbeat. The fact that Phyllis was standing there with her big pregnant belly was this wedding's way of thumbing its nose at tradition, and I guess I just responded to that. There were no bridesmaids, no groomsmen, there was no music. Phyllis's bridal bouquet was a bunch of sunflowers. I love sunflowers. It was so cute. And Phyllis just had on a really simple dress with a really simple Western style necklace, while Nick really got into the theme. You could tell that Nick was really feeling the theme in his plaid Western shirt. All of the guys, by the way, and every single guy in the bar had on the plaid shirt, because that's how you know you're in the country, plaid. But then, of course, Nick had on his scorpion bolo tie. I have to tell you, I had one of those scorpions when I was a kid that it was encased in amber or something. I don't know what exactly it was, but it was a scorpion that was preserved somehow. And my dad got it for me, I'm sure. Nobody else would have given that to me. I hated it. It made me very, very uncomfortable. Like I said last week, I hate bugs, and I classify anything that's creepy and crawly as a bug. Creepy and crawly and small is a bug, and I don't want it anywhere near me. But I had one of those encased scorpions, and I always felt like it was going to come alive at night and bite me. I was glad to get rid of it, I'm sure. Oh boy, but Nick, he had a whole lot of jokes about that scorpion. He made sure to squeeze every last joke out of that scorpion that he could. I'm surprised that he didn't tell Phyllis that his scorpion wanted to sting her. Wanky, wanky on their wedding night. This was just a fun episode. The wedding had everything. It was fun. It was romantic. It had the heightened drama of Nick joining in to fight the barn fire. Oh my goodness. And then the honeymoon suite flooded. So floods and fire. It was so appropriate. Phyllis and Nick were like a natural disaster that somehow turned out good. I think still to this day, they probably are one of my favorite couples of all time. And dare I say, I believe I enjoyed Phyllis and Nick's country wedding this week even more than Nick and Sharon's original wedding. Oh, can't believe I said it. we talked a little bit a few weeks ago about Carmen Mesta when we were a little bit further into the story and she was dead and Devon was getting ready to be charged with her murder. But here we are in 2006 this week, in the time that led up to her death, when Carmen was pressing charges against Drucilla for harassment. I actually do remember the incident where Drew broke into Carmen's hotel room and cut up all of her clothes with scissors. That's a pretty mean thing to do to a girl. But Carmen had her eyes set on Neil, and Drew was having none of it. And neither was Lily. So what did you guys think of Divita Sherwood as Lily? She only played that role for 1 year. And then she was gone. And I don't know if you guys felt the same way as me. And I don't know if I felt this way at the time. I suspect that I didn't. But I really liked her. I thought she was great. She reminded me a lot of Drucilla. And that is a criticism that we've seen of Crystal Khalil's Lily over the years, that Lily's nothing like her mother. Well, here we have Divita Sherwood as Lily, and maybe that was Y&R's brief response to that criticism of the character. Maybe they were trying to make Lily a little more like her mother, because Lily was up in Carmen's face. She was getting ready to start a fight while looking all cute in her pink tweed paperboy hat with that lacy blouse. I thought she looked really cute. She looked so much like Drucilla. I was just getting major Drew vibes from her, and I was really into it. I thought she had charisma. I also liked the way that she was spending a day in earplugs so that she could get a sense of the world, the way that Devon is now experiencing it. Devon had meningitis. I forgot this. And that's what had resulted in him having a total loss of hearing. And the episode we saw in 2006 was just the early days of Devon's hearing loss, before even he had the cochlear implant, and certainly before he had the other surgeries. And we were just in those very early stages where the family was trying to find ways to communicate with him. They even had to type out what they were saying to him. In retrospect, it's really pretty great that Y&R did this storyline, showing the ways that the Winters family had bonded together to make the best of a bad situation. They had that flashing light above the apartment door, if you notice that. I'm sure meant to help Devon be able to see when the doorbell was ringing or when someone was at the door. And it also looked like Lily and Devon had some sort of method of texting back and forth with each other, because Lily was transcribing to him what was going on and being said during Michael's visit about Drew's case. I think we're going to be seeing a lot more of Devon's journey in this time next week. It was a very heartbreaking time. I mean, can you even believe, oh my goodness, that scene where the guy at Newman Enterprises asked Devon to hold the elevator door for him, and when Devon couldn't hear it, the guy rushed up to him and said, "What are you, deaf?" Oh, yuck. Who would even say that? Even in 2006, who would say such a thing? Ugh. I mean, I think, of course, these days we would just assume that the person didn't hear you, just didn't hear you. They were on their phone. They were talking on their phone. They probably had their earbuds in. They just didn't hear it. Who would rush up to someone and say that? It just broke my heart. I would like to imagine that guy went home to his wife that night feeling absolutely awful and telling her about the whole thing. Oh, honey, I was such a jerk. I can't believe this happened to me. Because someone rushed up behind him and said, "Oh, hey, stupid, he is deaf." Oh, my goodness. I'd like to believe that that guy turned his life around and that now maybe he works at a center for the hearing impaired or something, because it hurt my little kitten heart. That whole incident hurt me. So I'm just going to pretend that that guy turned his life around and now he works at a center for the hearing impaired, and that's what's happened. Let's pretend it's true. Nikki and Victor's 2013 wedding, also known as Nikki and Victor's Killer Wedding. In the episode after the one that we saw this week, Adam would show up, crash the reception, and jump in front of a bullet that was aimed at Victor. Oh yes. That creepy guy who was lurking around in the background was on orders to take care of Victor, and I'm pretty sure he planted a bomb at the house too during the wedding, like to blow everybody up, just to make sure that the job was done. This is so Y&R of that period. We need some drama. Let's just blow some stuff up or burn it down. Ugh. Not the new ranch. Don't blow up the new ranch after you burn down the old ranch. I wanted to cry when we saw Melody Thomas Scott in her intro for that episode talking about how the ranch was her home and that it was devastating to her that it burned down, so much so that she had to take a few trinkets from the set. And then they rebuilt it, and the spot where Nikki and Victor got married on Friday, we don't even see that anymore. They really botched that ranch. But the episode from 2013 that we saw was right after they rebuilt the ranch, and it was right around the time of Y&R's 40th anniversary. So the show had produced a lot of these segments that aired in front of the episodes with the actors, reflecting on 40 years of the show. Very bittersweet, I'm sure, because Gene Cooper had just passed away in May of 2013. So just a few months prior to this wedding episode, she was gone. And in fact, I believe that no one knew yet that Catherine had passed away. Catherine was off on her world tour with Murphy at the time that the wedding was happening, but I believe shortly after it came back and learned the news. Yes, I mean, Catherine was noticeably absent at the wedding, and I wondered about that, so I had to go back and look up the timing there. Oh, that's sad. But the wedding was happy. What'd you guys think of the wedding? I thought Nikki looked beautiful. I mean, just absolutely spectacular. The hair, the makeup, the dress, the jewels, all styled to perfection. She could not have looked better. And I think this was just after Nikki had been diagnosed with MS. And there were all of these little moments, if you were cued into them, where she was getting dressed, walking down the stairs, and even the fact that she was there at all of those little things were considered to be very triumphant for her after having gone through this. I loved it. I loved the moments in her bridal suite where Abby and Victoria were there doing her makeup, giving her the crazy gifts. Oh, Abby. Who on earth would give who would give their stepmother sexy gifts to be used for one's father? No, thank you. But that was Abby. That's just who she was. She was a little spunky. But it was also very sweet that Billy had arranged for Reed to come to see Victoria. He was living with JT and Mac at the time, so it was very nice that they were there. And little Reed and Faith together were so adorable. Was everyone shocked to see how much Faith has changed in just 7 years? Oh my, time flies. Summer and Noah looked a lot younger too. Summer was much more of a sweetheart there. This was long before she became the sex pot who tried to seduce her mother's boyfriend, Billy. And wow, Noah. He looked like a model. He was really hot there. I could eat him up with a spoon. He and Nick had an eye on Abby, who was just starting up her flirtmance with Alex Chavez. Now that's Detective Chavez to you. He was the Genoa City cop of the day, kind of like Ray is today. Oh my gosh, I haven't even thought about Ray in months. I miss Ray. This is a good question. Is there anyone on the current cast that you're just sort of missing, that you haven't seen in the classics? Anybody maybe who is a newer cast? Who are you really wanting, who are you missing seeing in all of this? Who are you excited to see when we get back? I mean, we've had a lot of our classic characters, but some of our newer characters are like Hunky Ray. We haven't seen him in a while. I think it's also interesting that Michael and Lauren were there, and Lauren was deep into her affair with Carmine at that time. She was squirming away from all of Michael's touches. She was clearly uncomfortable to be there with him. And especially when Eric was doting upon them as a couple, that definitely made her uncomfortable. Yeah, I liked seeing Eric on the show. I would have really liked to have seen him make a cameo on the show. I want to see one of his episodes from when he was playing Lance Prentice. That would be amazing. I want to see him when he was in the 70s and 80s. That would have been cool. Did anybody see the Y&R B&B crossover this week? Bold and the Beautiful aired a week's worth of episodes where Y&R characters crossed over into LA. I really wish I could have seen that, but I just didn't have the time. But maybe some of our Y&R B&B dual watchers can chime in and let us know how it was. Next week is Emmy week, and it is going to be a real tearjerker. Literally, I started crying just from watching the 15-second promo. I mean, no kidding. 15 seconds of clips, and I was welled up with tears. Every single episode next week is going to be high emotion, high dramatic, Emmy-winning performances. Starting on Monday with Beth Maitland's Emmy-winning performance from 1984. This is my most anticipated episode of the week, hands down. I have no idea what it was about, but in the promo, she was talking about how she didn't even want to live. Oh my goodness, I'm going to be a puddle of blubber on Monday. And then on Tuesday, it is Eric Braeden with a Victor and Hope reunion from 1997, an Emmy-winning performance by Eric Braeden. I will probably be a puddle there too. Then we have Wednesday, Bryton James, Emmy-winning performance from 2006. That's right in that spot where Devon was had lost his hearing. So I'm assuming that's what we're going to be dealing with on Wednesday. Then Thursday is Peter Bergman from 1991, going all the way back to 1991. Again, I don't know what that episode is about, but Jack is always good. Jack is always emotional. So I'm sure it will be heightened, and I'm looking forward to it. And then we're going to cap off Friday's show with Cameron Grimes and her Emmy-winning performance from 1999 as Cassie. I'm sure that's going to rip my heart out. I've got my box of tissues, and I'm ready to cry. So bring it on. It will be brought. Last week's Who Said It quote from Romance Week was not very romantic at all. The quote was, "The white horse went lame." And the answer is Anita. Anita said that about the way Chelsea was looking over at Billy longingly like he was Prince Charming. And Anita says, no, stay focused on the con. The white horse went lame. Not a lot of people guessed that one. I knew it was going to be hard, but congratulations, Daisy, Henry, and Ambreen. You three got it right. Well, here's a quote for Weddings Week. What do you think about this? Who said it? we'll be married forever, right? YRChat.com, who said, we'll be married forever, right? I mean, I don't think any of the couples have been married forever. No, every single one of these couples have divorced. They might be married again right now, but there was at least one divorce in there. Oh my goodness. Well, if you think you know who said that quote, you can go to yrchat.com to leave your guess. And if you get it right, I will give you your shout out during next week's Y&R Chat. Well, I'd say it's time to read a few comments here, starting with Daisy, who says, every time they show a wedding and the vows of love and forever, I hear liar ringing out in Soapland. The closest characters in a long marriage is Victor and Nikki, and still, they've had a lot of breakups. But I guess that's something. It's all about the weddings anyway. I know, that's exactly why I picked that who said it quote, Daisy, because it's like, I mean, come on. Every single time they're vowing forever. You have to get into the moment because you want to enjoy the love and the romance, but you know darn well that they mean it in the moment, but it will never be true. They will always break that promise. Oh, well, hey, a follow-up from last week. Anna says, Jerry Douglas, John, did get a facelift. So they wrote it into the storyline, and shortly after, Jerry Douglas showed up on screen rejuvenated. Ashley mentioned it on screen, and I'm sure others did, but I specifically remember Ashley saying something like, you got your eyes done and you look fabulous. I know. Of course, I remember a storyline with John Abbott. Yes, Anna, I should have gone to you directly. You're the resident John Abbott expert, so I should have known that you would have remembered whether or not he had the facelift. So yes, it sounds like it was subtly. It was just sort of a, oh, we're going to mention this on screen because we're going to do this now, and not make a big deal out of it, because I want to say Catherine, they really went through the process with her facelift. I think they wanted to really show the process and talk about it, and they made a deal out of it. But it sounds like John's was just a little more subtle. Hey, speaking of that, Anna, so last week we were talking about the greatest decade of Y&R, and I was mentioning that my theory of why the 1970s didn't get more votes for being the greatest decade was because there aren't as many viewers who were watching in the 70s that are around today. I didn't mean that they're dead now. I realized later that, I think I see people probably thought I meant that people who were watching the 70s are probably dead, and that's why they're not voting for the 70s. No, I just meant that I think that people who were probably watching the show in the 70s have long moved on from watching Y&R. I cringed when I realized that it sounded like that's what I meant. No. I just think that over the course of 45 years, I'm sure that Y&R has lost many of its original viewers. They've just gone on to watch other things, or they're just not into it anymore. And that's why I think if you are an original viewer from the 70s and you've stuck with this show for 45 years, you get the all access pass. You're super special, because watching a show for that long and sticking with it through the good and the bad is really quite remarkable and dedicated. And I always give a little tip of my hat to anyone who's been watching since the beginning. I just think it is a shrinking few. Let's see. Well, you know what? Let's skip on over to talking about, speaking of last week, our poll question from last week. I asked you guys which of the romantic gestures from Romance Week you would most have liked to receive for yourself. Now, I guess I thought that these results were pretty surprising. The majority of voters voted that they would most like to have the lavish wedding in Provence. That got the #1 spot. Now, number 2 was tied. It was tied between your very own private yacht, like Victor and Ashley, and the sextant of Nick and Sharon's. I thought I was going to be the only one who wanted the sextant, but apparently there were plenty of other people who were interested in that particular romantic gesture. Let's see. 4th place went to the declaration of love in the middle of the street, followed by, in last place, the casino marriage proposal from Michael and Lauren. Let's read some comments on why you guys voted that. Ambrini says she voted for the yacht. Who wouldn't want to go for a ride on the water whenever they travel or want to travel to a bunch of places? When I see people watching fireworks from their boat, I'm like, that would be a cool view. I love the echo of the fireworks on the water, and I'm sad that Canada fireworks are canceled this year. It's something I always look forward to. You know, I guess the yacht was a little bit of a dark horse. I didn't expect as many people to pick that. Maybe it's also just regional. I live on a river. And I see a lot of boats, and I totally get what you're saying about the fireworks on the boat. Yes, and it is sad that nobody's going to be able to do that this year. I think it's probably locally some people are doing it, but I'm guessing the majority aren't. But yes, I think that would be really very lovely. I guess I just haven't had a whole lot of boat experience, so the yacht didn't speak to me personally. But yeah, it does sound lovely as long as I can have plenty of sunscreen and a place to have some shade. Oh, I'm not real outdoorsy. I enjoy being outside, but I just like a quiet, calm, woodsy, country kind of outside. I'm not real beachy, not real beachy and boaty and watery, but this is a personal choice. That's why I like this poll question, because it's just sort of like, okay, well, what appeals to you, and what appeals to you is not the same as what appeals to me. But TB84 also picked the sextant. My preference. TB84 says, I picked Sharon and Nick's gesture to Sharon. Out of this rich and splendor, this was the simplest, and I guess to me the most romantic. They all were, don't get me wrong, but this one was simple yet thoughtful, and at the same location where they live. Nick must have put in a lot of work to prepare it, and that needs to be appreciated too. Yes, I know. I love just that they kind of bumbled into it. It was a fantasy that was close to home. Yeah, I think that is romantic. But Victoria says, I chose the wedding in Provence. Wouldn't it be fun to stroll down the French Riviera? Also, it would be fabulous to take a bike or a car ride past the fields of lavender. And don't get me started on the cooking and the bread. Please, Allie, take me and my future spouse away. Oh, yes. Oh, my. I have some lavender growing right now, too. I just have it in pots. I like the smell. I love lavender, and that would be so wonderful. Yes. If I didn't have to worry about the budget of the vacation, because I'm sure that is costly. Strolling down the French Riviera, I'm sure it's like money's flying out the window and off your bike and everywhere. Every time you turn around, there's like money flying off your pockets. So if I didn't have to worry about that part and I could just enjoy the stroll and partake of all of the local flavors and sights and sounds and smells, then yes, that would be very romantic. Oh, let's talk about these weddings. Kamna says, I didn't think Victor and Nikki would be my favorite wedding of the week, but it was, and I hadn't seen it before. Their vows were so real, and I loved Nadia's theme playing in the background, and Nikki looked absolutely radiant. Oh, they always get me with that Nadia's theme, and they played the long version of the song too. I believe that was the original and long version of the theme song. Every time I hear it, it's Pavlovian. I can't stop myself from crying. Oh, more on these weddings. Gary says Sharon is one of the prettiest brides, I think, just from looking so fresh and young. she's not a hottie bride like Lauren Fenmore would be. Yes, I know. It was, I mean, Sharon was just, she just looked like an angel, right? I mean, she wasn't there to be sexy or sensual. It was very traditional, and it definitely had that sense of tradition. You know, she was so young and she was just entering into her first marriage. And although she was young, she was not entirely innocent. I think Sharon had some experiences in the past, but there was something that did look so fresh about her. And I think that part of the reason I'm voting for Sharon this week, and part of the reason I found her so compelling in retrospect, is because it's hard to not make that comparison between Sharon then and Sharon now. I mean, she did have this real softness to her back then, and real sweetness, and she did seem naive in a way, and maybe that's what it was that Doris was always extra protective with Sharon about. Maybe she was a little naive about the world, but she certainly evolved over time. Absolutely. And I think probably being thrust into the very wealthy and manipulative Victor Newman family is what did it for her, what kind of, caused her to wise up. Justin says, I've seen people at funerals that looked happier than Nikki did at her own son's wedding. Yes, Justin, I think Nikki saw it as a funeral in a way. And the years that led up to it, the years following, were definitely a shift for Nikki's character, as she was very, very focused on Nick and Sharon's marriage. She didn't like it, she didn't want it, and she wanted it to be done. She was a major challenge for them right in the beginnings, and it was still quite a pleasure to watch. Hey, Colleen says, Allie, I agree. Marcy Rylan was Abby personified. Remember when she rode naked on the horse? How about when she was pregnant and wardrobe kept concealing her bump with bigger and bigger handbags? Her warm and bubbly portrayal seemed so natural. It was tough adjusting to the new Abby, who still to this day seems cold and stiff to me. Oh, I gotta say, yes, I totally remember when Marcy Rylan was pregnant and she had such a big baby belly, and Y&R was trying to film around it. So she was just like holding handbags in front of her, and the handbags just got bigger and bigger as her belly got bigger and bigger. Or they would have to find bigger and bigger lamps. Like, it was just funny to watch the ways that they were trying to film around her pregnancy. But also, I love your point that she was bubbly, but it seemed real. It seemed natural. She wasn't forcing it in any way. And I agree with you that it was quite a transition into accepting Melissa Ordway's portrayal of the role, because it is very different. And I think she spent a lot of years, honestly, being stiff in the role. And I do think that she has warmed up a lot within the last year or two. And I still prefer Marcy's portrayal, but I've definitely come to appreciate some of the nuance that Melissa has brought to the role on her own. I think she's warmer than she used to be. Oh, hey, let's talk about, here's a comment from Daisy. Probably, I know how you're going to vote in this week's poll, Daisy. Daisy says, I loved Olivia's wedding dress. It looked really pretty on her. She would have looked nice at an outdoor wedding too. But except for Olivia being late and in love with Neil, it was a lovely ceremony. And the more I see them in the past, the more I want Olivia and Drew to return. I'm still hopeful. I know, I don't think they're ever going to bring Drew back, but I don't see any good reason why Olivia couldn't come back. And yes, she did have a lovely dress, and you make the best point that, yeah, she was almost dressed for an outdoor wedding. It was lavender, and it was sort of ruffly up over, not ruffly, but I don't know, it was a strapless ruffle. And it had a very intricate back on it. It was very floral. There was a lot of floral detailing on it that made it a very interesting dress, but you are totally right. It's like all of the elements were there. I just felt like the venue was not right. But I think having it outdoor would have really lightened it up. Maybe if it were in a tent. Doesn't have to be a sex tent. There's other tents. But maybe a tented outdoor wedding would have been a little more natural for this couple. I'll be interested to see the poll results for which dress you liked best. I'm going Sharon, but I think there are some other interesting choices here. Even though Phyllis's dress was simple, I also really liked it too. Nikki was perfect. I mean, Chris was so she was like the personified bride of her time. Oh, there's too many to choose from. It's going to be a tough choice. Oh, this is an interesting point from Ellen saying, these early Y&R weddings were very religious in tone. I'm surprised that lightning didn't strike in the background. No kidding. I mean, boy, of all these people, they're standing before God and their family and the minister saying their vows, and you know that those vows are going to be broken. Bunch of sinners, they certainly are. But I think maybe this is why I responded just a little bit more to Nick and Phyllis's offbeat wedding, just because it was a little different. It's, the tradition has its place. I certainly love the traditional weddings, the traditional church weddings, and and there is something to be said for that, making that vow. But I guess I like also having the variety, just showing us a little something different, that it doesn't always have to be traditional. There are lots of different relationships and lots of different families, and I really I would like to see maybe more variety when it comes to the types of weddings that we see. But I mean, they were all very lovely, but definitely some similarities there. Diana says, fun fact, the minister who married Malcolm and Olivia at the wedding is Christophe St. John's real father. I learned this after Christophe passed away. Y&R mentioned this fact when they were talking about Christophe St. John's life and career. Diana, thank you, because I was looking at the minister and I was thinking, he looks so familiar. Where have I seen him? I think he also played the minister at Neil and Drew's wedding, right? So that's so wonderful. How great is that? I mean, you totally helped me connect those dots, because I do remember them saying that during the Christophe tribute episode, that minister was Christophe's father. Oh, yes. Lovely. Well, let's see. Oh, Jamie says, I hate Carmen Mesta still and more. And Drew's dorky bandana was distracting. Okay, first of all, yes, I just hate Carmen Mesta. I don't know what it is, but I mean, are there any Carmen Mesta fans? Does anyone have fond memories of her? There's something about her. Maybe it's because Drew hated her that just made me hate her too. But oh, I saw so many comments about Drew's bandana this week. I don't know. It didn't bother me. Maybe she had, it was basically a bright yellow hanky bandana, and she had it tied in a different way. It had like two ties, one on each side. I don't know, it didn't bother me. Maybe it was just because it was bright yellow. Maybe that's why it was distracting. Maybe if it had been a more subtle color, no one would have noticed it. But it's actually, this is one of the things I actually like about Drew. She always had some kind of hat. Drew had her own fashion sense. She was bold, she was bright, she was audacious, and she did tend to like having hats. And we don't see a lot of hats on the show. I'm not a hat person. I just can't really pull it off. But I wish I could, because I kind of like hat fashion. Yes, that didn't bother me all that much. I thought it was a little bit cute, and one of those. I found it sort of charmingly Drew. But yes, it's a comment that I saw a couple times. Oh, Superplex. Watching that scene with Jack and Dina, and Superplex says, too bad for Jack. 24 years later is too late to effect a reconciliation. Alzheimer's has robbed him of that opportunity now. I know. You know what the thing though is it's that Dina robbed them both of that opportunity. It's so clear that Jack was willing and that he wanted to reach out to her, but he was only going to reach so far because he was afraid of being rejected. I'm sure that Jack felt that his mother rejected him, rejected the family, and he was just longing and waiting for her to reach out a little bit, and she never did it. I don't know. I mean, by the time the children are grown, I don't think you need to coddle them. I mean, she didn't owe Jack her life, to turn around and move to Genoa City, but it was never played upon that she followed up on the relationship or that they had any relationship. It was always, well, Dina's gone again. And I think that she takes some responsibility for that. And it really wasn't until her later years that she started to try to make amends. And I mean, 24 years gone by from where we saw her in that episode, and she hadn't done it until the very end. I mean, it's just a really good cautionary tale that you should not wait until the end to let people know how you feel about them and to develop the relationships that are important to you. Because, I mean, we saw, Dina, she had written some of her, in her end of life wishes, the regrets that she had about her life. And I mean, and that was the biggest one. I think the fact that she just didn't, she wasn't there for her kids. And that's a pretty big burden to have at the end. So, yes, I was definitely zeroed in on that scene, and it is very, very sad, but it's also a very good reminder for the rest of us too. Oh, well, let's end on a happier note. Marianne V says, I watched the Y&R B&B crossovers. It was good. There was Victor helping to make Ridge jealous by kissing Brooke in the same restaurant. Mrs. Chancellor let Stephanie know that she's the sole owner of Forrester Creations. Sheila was after the Forresters and actually married to Eric for a while. Jack agreed to make a fragrance from Jabot for Brooke's bedroom, and Ashley was actually engaged to Rich for a while. Ooh, I wish I would have really seen him. I did have the TV running, and I did bop in on Friday's episode just the tiniest little bit, and I saw Ashley there. Oh man, I wish I would have seen the Mrs. Chancellor and Stephanie episode, considering both of the characters are passed away now. Oh, I'm sorry that I missed that. Maybe I will have a chance to go back and watch one of these days. I'm saying this from my lips, but I know that it's not going to be true, because where am I going to get the time? Yeah, I do, maybe someday. Maybe when my daughter's a little older and she can make her own peanut butter and jellies, maybe I can go back and watch that crossover week. But we have some good news on that note. Bold and the Beautiful has gone back into production. It looks like, from what I understood, they went back to production for one day, and then they halted because they wanted to make sure that everyone's safe. They had some extra precautions that they needed to deal with, but it sounds like they are planning to go back again on Tuesday. So Bold and the Beautiful is back in production. Y&R is not at the time that I'm recording this and of my knowledge, but I'm sure that Y&R is going to be right behind them. And from what I'm hearing on the grapevine, it's good news that new episodes could be airing for Bold and the Beautiful and presumably Y&R as early as July. Oh, wouldn't that be wonderful? I'm so excited for new episodes. I mean, I'm loving these classics, but I miss Ray. At the end of the day, I miss Ray. And I wonder where we are with Sharon now. I mean, those were the thoughts that were really heavy in my mind this week. Like, looking at young Sharon, I'm thinking, where are we? I mean, I don't even remember where we are in the current stories. I really, truly don't. My memory's terrible, and my mind has been focused in so many other directions with all these classics. So I wonder if Y&R's just going to jump right back in, pick us up right where we were, or if there's going to be any kind of, where last we picked up on Y&R. Are they going to do any kind of recap episode, maybe just to help us get back in? Because I don't remember. Wasn't Sharon getting ready to go into surgery? I don't remember. Oh my goodness. No, she didn't have the surgery. Were they going to do another medication? I see, I'm lost. I'm totally lost. But I'll get there. I'll get there eventually. And I'm excited too. I am looking forward to our new episodes. But next week, Emmy week, that's going to be good too. I hope you're going to be right there with me with your box of tissues. Keep me in mind every day. You know, I'll be crying right there along with you. And I'll be back again next Sunday to chat about it. All right, you guys, I'm going to get going, but I love ya, and I will see you next time. Bye.